Great. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Town of Greater Napanee regular session of council for the 28th day of May 2024. Just before we get going, I'd just like to remind everyone that this evening's meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the Town of Napanee YouTube channel. So we can sit and watch it live this evening if folks want to, or watch it anytime after tonight. So welcome to the folks that are here in the body of our council chambers. We'll start off by doing our report from closed session. I'll look for a motion to rise and report from closed session. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Norrie. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. I'd like to report from closed session that we approved the closed session minutes of May 14th. We received information regarding a prospective acquisition of land and gave direction to staff. And we received information regarding a human resources matter and gave direction to staff. I'll also be looking for an additional motion as well with respect to the purchase of land that we did in closed session. And that motion would be that council approve the recommendation of confidential report SR 503/2024 and authorize staff to acquire land for the purpose of improving the value of the town's industrial land holdings, and further that council direct a public report be brought forward at the next available opportunity, and further that council authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute all necessary documents with respect to this acquisition. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Shank. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. We'll look for a motion for the adoption of the agenda as presented. Moved by Councillor Pennell, seconded by Councillor Hicks. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Seeing none. Moving right into presentations. We have a presentation this evening for Fire Chief for a Day Coloring Contest winner. And I think Chief Armstrong is going to come up and say a few words. So come on up, Chief Armstrong.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. It is my honor and a bit of sadness that I was replaced today by a fire chief from a school, a local school hereby. And we have Natalina Izakowski here, who was, I'll let Dean describe it more, but he'll give you an overview of the duties that she carried out today and the benchmarks that she followed.
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So yeah, Natalina was our lucky winner of our grade 5 poster contest this year. The theme for this year was cooking safety. And Natalina's poster was chosen, first of all, for color, the messaging that conveyed for cooking safety. And out of 117 different posters that we reviewed, hers came out on top. She did a fabulous job for messaging.
Great. Thanks, Dean. We appreciate that. I think what we'll do now is we'll get to Natalina to come up, and we're going to do a little presentation. So come on up, Natalina. Okay, thanks. Thanks for bearing with us there, folks. We're moving on to deputations. First up is scheduled deputations with respect to new items, and I don't believe, Madam Clerk, we have any of those. Next up, deputations with respect to items on the agenda, and I believe we do have a deputation from the Greater Napanee Pride Month Proclamation. So who's doing that? Okay, come on up. We'll get you just to identify yourself, and once you sit down, and I'll just remind you if that you have to push the button and hold the button to talk. If not, people at home don't hear you, and then I get really, really nasty text messages. So go ahead, Mr. Beauchesne, and we'll allow you to have the floor. So go ahead.
So my name is Chris Beauchesne. I'm the chair of the Greater Napanee Pride Association. And I'm just here to make a proclamation for the month of June being Pride Month. So
Yeah.
Mayor Richardson, Mayor Calver, council members, as we gather to acknowledge and celebrate the diverse tapestry of our community, I am here to request your support in officially recognizing June as Pride Month in Greater Napanee. The acknowledgement isn't just a formal gesture, but a profound declaration of our town's commitment to inclusivity and acceptance. Pride Month is an opportunity to reflect on the courage and contributions of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, whose rich history is woven with stories of resilience and triumph against adversity. Celebrating this month helps educate our community, fosters empathy, and strengthens our collective commitment to a society where every individual is respected and valued, irrespective of their sexual orientation or gender identity. The celebration of Pride has tangible benefits for our town, enhancing our commercial and economic vitality. Last year, we witnessed an influx of participants and visitors, which translated into significant local spending and economic activity. As we strive to build an inclusive community, the visibility and activities during Pride Month foster a sense of belonging and community pride, attracting more residents and visitors to our area. It's important to note the extensive financial support from individuals and families within our community this year. The contribution echoes the pride, a deeply rooted value shared by many in our community. This year, we seek not only your endorsement, but also active support in promoting these events. We ask of the town council to assist publicizing Pride events through official channels and social media, helping us amplify the reach and impact of these celebrations. By supporting Pride, we make statements about the values of Greater Napanee as a place of welcome, where diversity is not just accepted, but celebrated. Let's continue to lead by example, showing that in our community, love and unity prevail over division and discrimination. Thank you for your support.
Thanks, Chris. Does anyone have any questions of Chris? I think it's probably fairly self-explanatory, and the new paint on the crosswalk actually coincides quite nicely with the new paint we're putting on this building here. So the timing is actually very well timed. So thanks, Chris. And you're more than welcome to stick around. We'll do the proclamation a little bit later in the meeting. It's part of our consent agenda, but so you're more than welcome to hang around and watch. So I think that's the only deputations we have for stuff on the agenda, I think, Madam Clerk. We'll look for a motion to note and receive the deputation from Chris Beauchesne, moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Martin. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Next up, correspondence items on the agenda, and I don't believe we have any of those, Madam Clerk. Moving on to unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business? And I don't believe so. So there's no unfinished business. That moves us right into the administrative consent agenda. And it's a little bit lengthy, but bear with us and we'll get through it. So first up, we have the council minutes for the regular session of council, May 14th, 2024. Is there anything in those minutes that anyone would like to speak to or address? Seeing none. Correspondence for information items dated May 28th, 2024. Is there any correspondence that anyone would like to pull and have a conversation about or to highlight? Seeing none. Proclamation requests, Seniors Month, World Blood Donor Week, and Pride Month, which we just heard about. Is there anything anyone would like to highlight with respect to any of those proclamations that are before us this evening? Seeing none. The council inquiries follow-up. There's a report with respect to council inquiries follow-up for May 28th, 2024. Is there any conversations or discussions that anyone wants to have with respect to that report? Yeah, go ahead, Ange. Just push your button there.
Push the button, right? If I may, Your Worship, I'd just like to thank staff for taking on the reporting 4 times a year. I think it's important that we all see it and know what's going on. So thank you.
Yep, great. Thanks, Councillor Hicks. If there's nothing further, moving on to the outdoor patio license, Jimmy's Italian Kitchen at 35 Jim Kimmett Boulevard. Is there any questions or comments anyone wants to make with respect to that? Go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to announce that with this report that there's a request for 9 tables with 16 chairs and 4 picnic tables. So it's going to almost double the size of that restaurant, I think. So it's going to be great. I just want to make sure that everybody heard that. Thanks.
Yep, great. Thanks, Councillor Pennell. Appreciate that. Moving on, if there's nothing further on that, we'll move on to the activity report, growth and development, May 28th, 2024. Is there anything in that report that anyone would like to speak to, or is there anything that staff would like to highlight within that report? Go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship. Through you, I just want to bring to everybody's attention that the open house for the official plan update is scheduled for June 20th, starting at 6 p.m. held at 99 Advance Avenue. Everybody's welcome. And at 6:15, there will be a presentation. So come early, get a seat, and see what's going to be on the draft for the official plan update. This is something that we've been waiting for a while, so it's going to be exciting.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Councillor Pennell. Is there anything else? Seeing none. Activity report, infrastructure services, May 2024. Is there anything that in that report that council would like to highlight, or anything the staff would like to highlight in that report or bring to our attention? Seeing none. Financial services, activity report, May of 2024. The same question. Is there anything that council would like to highlight or bring to anybody's attention, or that any staff would like to speak to in that report? Seeing none. Legislative Services Activity Report, May 2024. Once again, we have a report in front of us. Is there anything that anyone would like to highlight, or if staff would like to bring anything to our attention? Seeing none. Activity Report, Community and Corporate Services, May of 2024. We have a report in front of us again. Is there anything that council would like to speak to or highlight, or is there anything that any staff members would like to highlight within that report? Seeing none. And the Fire Department Activity Report, May 28th, 2024. Once again, is there anything in that report anyone would like to highlight or bring to our attention, or is there anything that staff would like to mention or highlight? Seeing none. So bear with me. We've got a fairly lengthy motion that council consent to the approval of the following routine items: that the minutes of regular session of council dated May 14th, 2024 be adopted as presented, that the correspondence for information items dated May 28th, 2024 be received, that council receive for information and endorse the proclamations for Seniors Month, World Donor Week, World Blood Donor Week, and Pride Month, that council receive for information the inquiry's follow-up report for May 28th, 2024, that council receive for information the 2024 outdoor patio license, Jimmy's Italian Kitchen at 35 Jim Kimmett Boulevard report, and further that council approve an outdoor patio license for Jimmy's Italian Kitchen from May 29th to September 30th, 2024 at 35 Jim Kimmett Boulevard, Napanee, subject to the following conditions. The owner shall ensure clearances around fire hydrants are met to the satisfaction of the fire department, and to ensure that the patio meets all the conditions of bylaw number 04-38 and all public health and provincial requirements. And finally, that the activity reports for growth and development, infrastructure services, financial services, legislative services, community and corporate services, and the fire department for the month of May of 2024, which are items 8.7 through 8.12, be received for information. Moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Pennell. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Items for consideration. 2024 Community Risk Assessment Fire Protection Services, and I believe Chief Armstrong, you'll speak to that.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. It's a pleasure to be here tonight to present the 2024 Community Risk Assessment. Community risk assessment that's done in accordance with the Fire Protection and Prevention Act and is due by July 1 of this year. I have a presentation that I'd like to quickly go through with council and summarize the report and then take any questions if that's.
Yeah, I think, I don't think the presentation's overly long, so I think it's probably best that you go through the presentation if we have any questions, so we can ask questions afterwards. So yeah, go ahead, Chief Armstrong. I know the feeling. Oh, sorry, Sean, we got to get you push the button there as well, so.
Apologies, Your Worship. The community risk assessment is a mandatory requirement to complete, and it must, council must use the community risk assessment under the regulation to make informed decisions on the provision of fire protection services. So this is the first step towards that. The actual community risk assessment was completed, started in 2022 and completed recently by the Lumex Group. They started working with staff on the 9 community profiles, and as a result, we finalized the draft and the council report this past month. Just to give council an awareness of what was assessed, we assessed 461.31 square kilometers with the fire stations across that area. And we assessed it against the population of 16,879, which was the census population data for the last census period. We noticed an increase in population of 6.2% since 2016, which growth attributes oftentimes to additional call volume. And we've noted that within the risk assessment. We moved the previous to that. It was in 2016. It was 15,892, and 29.8% of the population live in what I would describe as the older Napanee, the serviced area, and 70.2% of the population live in the rural fabric of this community. There was a 3-step process to assess the risk in the community. So we would determine the probability of an incident occurring. We'd determine the consequence of the incident occurring, and we would categorize the risk level based on the identified probability and consequence. So that would be in a low, moderate, high. Just to give council an awareness of the probabilities that the OFM prescribes in the technical guidance note for completing a community risk assessment. A rare situation is it might occur in exceptional circumstances. Unlikely, it could occur at some time, especially if the circumstances change. Possible might occur under certain circumstances, and likely will probably occur at some time under current circumstances, and almost certain the event will under most circumstances unless circumstances change. And we look at past historical response events to determine the probability of an incident occurring. So we look at the building stock within the community. We look at community demographics. We look at the past history and the dollar loss of the fire service that is experienced with their responses. And then we rate that as insignificant, minor, moderate, major, or catastrophic event. These are the 9 areas that we assessed, and we assessed each area individually and the geographic profile, so the features within the community that might add risk to the community, whether it's fast flowing water or if it's a certain feature within the community that creates an elevated level of risk. The building stock profile, we looked at all of the building occupancy types, and we looked at the fire occurrence in those occupancy types, and we looked at the dollar loss associated with that. Critical infrastructure profile, we basically aligned with the hazard identification and risk assessment that's completed by the Community Emergency Management Coordinator, our own Aaron Tires, and we looked at that infrastructure profile and any other things that would contribute to risk in the community if we were without it or if something happened to it. The demographic profile, we looked at the age range of the people, the working nature of the community, some of the community behaviors that might go with that demographic, and we rated that individually. The hazard profile, we looked at certain hazards in the community, whether it's, flooding or a lake situation or a motor vehicle incident on the 401. We looked at all of those, and we looked at all of the hazards within the community, and we provided a rating for that. Public safety response profile, how our partners and ourselves as a fire service respond to incidents and how we work together to do that is a very important factor on how we address risk. The community service profile, those agencies that are in our community that can aid in assisting fire services when there's risks faced in the community, and how available and how ready are they to support us in that situation. The economic profile, the economic drivers of the community, and what would happen if those drivers were impacted by fire and how that would impact the community was assessed. And as I said earlier, the past event and loss history of the community. With all of that gathered, we assessed each one with the risk level matrix. So the probability and the consequence was rated. As you can see, if I just take council through the bottom one, which is rare, and it was a moderate risk based on the categorization, it would be a low risk situation. If it was almost certain that it was happened and it would cause a moderate impact to the consequence of the community, it would be a high risk situation. So the community risk assessment looked at all of that and provided a categorization for those risks. This is a summary of all that I just said and within the community, and you can see that 55.6% of the community is moderate risk, and 33.3 are low, and the high risk was noted in the building stock profile, specifically in the industrial occupancy was rated as a high hazard, and some parts of it was rated as a very high hazard by Lumex. But the incidence of fire and that rated it at 11.1% of the overall risk in the community. And we work with our industrial partners to mitigate those risks. As you can see, the past event history and that we've experienced over the years since 2019 or 2018. And you can see that dip in the COVID years where actually responses went down. People were staying home. There wasn't as much activity in the community. And that's why you see that dip. But when you look at 2018, 612 response total, and you look at 2023 as 722, you can see there has been an increase in the call volume, which correlates, I believe, to the increase in the population and the growing community that we have. This is just a image that describes the amount of the breakdown of the incidents that we go to. And you can see here, we're reviewing the medical calls at 42.7%, and we're looking at strategies to improve upon that number and mitigate some of those incidents. Looking at structure fires as 2.4% of our overall call volume from that time period. Vehicle collisions, 14.2%, and false fire alarms at 18.4%. So those are by far the largest. And not to say in the smaller slices of the pie, the risk isn't extreme or could be deadly to people. It's just that these are the amounts of calls we're going to.
And maybe we can just get you to move the microphone a little bit closer to you, Chief. Yeah, just I think there's some folks at home that are having a difficult time hearing, so thank you.
Thanks, Your Worship. This image shows the past dollar loss from 2018 to 2022, and you can see by far the largest dollar loss is in the Group C occupancies, which are the dwelling units, both single-family dwelling and the multifamily dwelling, and then other structures within within the community. This could be outbuilding, other structures that aren't classed under the Ontario Building Code. But when you add the Group C and the other together, we're close to $7 million in loss over the same period. And Group F being the industrial, you're looking at $1.17 million in loss. So as a fire service, my recommendation would be our focus is on the mitigating the fires in the residential and the other categories to reduce fire loss in the community. This will also have a corresponding effect on people's insurance rates if we're not experiencing a large loss fire. Thank you. All of that information is contributes to strengthening the 3 lines of defense, which are public fire safety education, fire safety standards and enforcement, and our emergency response crews. As you see the picture of the stool, if you took one leg out of the stool would fall over. So our fire service is consolidated based on those 3 lines of defense and equally important to each other and to the community. Council can also provide and direct the fire service to provide such other fire protection services as it determines may be necessary in accordance with its needs and circumstances. So that that's also available if we were to embark upon a specialized rescue or something that we're not traditionally doing. Council could direct that. Lumex provided the risk treatment options, and I can report that they're not extreme by any means, and they're not overwhelming. Many of the things we would continue to provide. My only caveat would be we record and present them and report them on a more frequent basis, so they're accurately reporting on any trends that council should be aware of, and that will help make informed decisions about the fire protection level of services. There's also a piece in there which would be identifying any resources and needs for the future budgetary deliberations, and we'll certainly bring back any impacts that this risk assessment might have in an annual budget process. So that would be something we would just fold into our normal operations, incorporate that in moving forward. This goes on. Nothing here that's terribly overwhelming. You know, sharing the incident response duties with applicable rail service operators, just working together and building more concrete relationships with our agencies and our community will help greatly. And just having putting a face to the name and responding together in a coordinated fashion. This document's really foundational, Your Worship, to establishing the next steps, which are completing a master fire plan. It provides an overall strategy and vision for the fire services and includes longer-term goals and resource allocation and operational guidelines that will help provide council with the information they need during budget deliberations for both operating and capital acquisitions that we need to present. So the master fire plan would also include an operational review of existing services. So looking at the efficiency and effectiveness using response time standards or other standards to identify when equipment needs to be replaced or to certain response protocols, aligning that with corporate structures and corporate policies to make sure that fleet and equipment acquisition is aligned with and lined up with, coordinated with the other corporate services that we work with. Part of the master fire plan is also looking at a 3 to 15 year strategic operating plan. So really looking at things like our mission, vision, values, and also looking at what strategic objectives that the fire service would like to complete. How do they line up with council's strategic objectives, and how can we support improving the community through that strategic planning process in partnership? And we looked at the 3 to 15-year strategic plan to also look at the fire department operations over an extended period, aligning with community needs and circumstances. So if there's new growth in the area, that whether it goes up, down, or sideways, we're there ready to deal with it. Next recommendation would be to look at, through the master fire planning, is bring forward a new establishing and regulating bylaw, updating the current bylaw, and make sure that council has clarity on what types of services we have been providing, whether we have creeped out a scope on that over the years, or whether we have to add or change that. We can certainly present that information back to council. Pardon? Yeah, next one, please. That might be the last one for tonight. I'm working two things here, and I'm not good at either of them, I guess. But all these components will work together in the master fire plan to ensure that fire protection and emergency responses are effective and efficient and are done in a manner that's consistent with the quality that the corporation puts out for the community.
Great. Thank you very much, Chief. That's a great presentation. And I know that a lot of work and time and effort has gone into the community risk assessment. So thank you for presenting that. Does anyone on council have any questions or comments with respect to the Chief's presentation and the community risk assessment? Go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Chief, I just had one question, and it's on slide 132, risk treatment options. Review the current roadways under municipal control to identify high collision areas, because I know motor vehicle collisions are a pretty 401 notwithstanding. But do you also work with the county? Because don't they have a technical advisory committee that discusses roads, whether or not they should be putting up the boxes to test or check speed, that sort of thing? So do you work with them on a regular basis?
Through Your Worship, we have not worked with them on a regular basis, but that will be work that will occur through the master fire plan. Also, we know that OPP have traffic specialists, and they might be able to provide important inputs to the data. And we should be able to pull together the high areas of risk with respect to motor vehicle collisions and how we could better respond to those.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship, through you. Chief, thank you very much for coming tonight and giving us this report, all 137 pages of it. Thank you. So as I was reading these pages of the community risk assessment, I couldn't help but notice that actually on pages 76 to 93 of the report, the same theme came up under the risk treatment plans. The question was, is the community capable of delivering required services? And I'll read what the answer was in the report. It said, in most cases, the department can deliver the required services as long as adequate number of paid on-call firefighters respond to an emergency. It then carries on to say, some incidents may require additional or specialized assistance. As of this CRA, the department is a member of a provincial and KFLA mutual aid system, which ensures that the help is available if we need it. When I see this over and over and over for all the risks, I couldn't help but ask myself, and I'd like to ask you tonight, is there enough paid on call showing up?
Through Your Worship, my assessment is currently no. And so that'll be further work in the master fire planning process, looking at recruitment strategies to not only retain our quality of firefighters that we now enjoy, but recruit the ones for the future. And so the recruitment and retaining firefighters is very important. There are some indicators that we can look at, and we are embarking on a recruitment strategy that will commence after the newest recruits are starting. And I could take this opportunity to mention that they will be graduating on June 13th, and we're happy to have 7 join our team, but we're down currently about 14. So we'll hit the ground running again, and working with my colleagues to recruit the new paid-on-call firefighters. Also, we're one department, so we have paid-on-call and full-time staff, and we'll be looking at how that works together and to get the best possible response to the community based on the levels of service that council sets for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pennell. And I know from some of my hobbies that we're not special in that means, is that acquiring and keeping paid-on-call folks right across, not just even this country, but even in the United States of America, there's a very consistent message that's out there that it's difficult to find people these days. So I know that we're doing everything we can do, and I know we're working hard at it. So thank you, Councillor Pennell. Thank you, Chief Armstrong. So is there any other questions or comments? If not, we do have a recommendation that council receive for information the fire chief's presentation and the 2024 community risk assessment attached as Appendix A and B to report SR 491-2024, and further that council directs the fire chief to use the 2024 community risk assessment as a foundation to begin the master fire planning process and return a draft master fire plan to for council's consideration by the end of September 2024, and further that any service level changes and related financial implications associated with master fire plan should be brought forward for consideration as part of the 2025 annual operating and capital budget process. Moved by Councillor Norrie, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, go ahead, Councillor Shank.
Well, I'll just give you one example. 502 and Deswanna Road, before they did a turnaround or did the circle there, that was a high impact vehicle. So when they're doing, and what the chief has done with the community risk assessment and working with all the different agencies, they will diagnose and show different areas that are, and they will do certain reconstructions on certain roads or whatever to mitigate any of those major impact areas. So there is stuff that has been done in the past that will continue on, and I have faith that the chief will definitely go through that and do a good job.
I agree, Councillor Shank. Thank you for your comments. Is there any other further comments or questions? If not, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Next up is the April 2024 Access E11 report and E11 presentation. Madam Clerk, are you going to deal with that one?
So through your worship, we actually have our data management clerk, Diana Tyner, is going to be joining us here via Zoom. The E11 report is as normal, but we are working on, I say we, Diana is working on an updated, slightly more interactive dashboard version of this report for council and the public to use. And Diana's just going to show a preview of what we're hoping to have that look like.
Hi there.
Great. You've got the floor, Diana, whenever you're
Just
ready.
gonna share
Welcome,
my
and
screen.
go ahead.
Perfect. I just wanted to confirm everyone can hear me and see the screen.
Yeah, we can see the screen and we can hear you. So the floor is yours when you're ready.
I'm gonna stop sharing for a sec. Hello?
Yep, you're still here. We've lost your presentation, but we can see you. So whenever you can get it up there, Diana. I don't know whether she can hear us, Kylie. Can you hear us, Diana? It doesn't seem like Diana can hear us. Just bear with us, folks. Technology is a wonderful thing when it works.
Sorry, can't hear.
Okay, yeah, we can hear you, Diana. Go ahead if you can hear us. Is this something maybe we can work on and come back to, or is it something that we've got an easy fix to, Kylie? Okay, maybe what we can do is, if it's okay with Madam Clerk, we can maybe come back to this, or did you want to speak to the E11 report and then see if Diana can get the technology working on her end?
Yeah, through your worship, if there's any specific questions about any of the data in the April 2024 report, we can certainly answer those. And if we can get Diana back later this evening, we'll do that. Otherwise, we can try and reschedule this for a later meeting.
I'm sure we'll have another meeting in a couple of weeks. So yeah, okay. Is there any questions for Madam Clerk with respect to the E11 report that we have in front of us this evening? Seeing none, we do have a recommendation that council note and receive the April 2024 Access E11 report, and we'll leave off the E11 presentation until we get that. So note and receive the E11 report, moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Martin. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. May 2024 short-term accommodations update. Madam Clerk, is that one yours as well?
So through your worship, this report is here as an interim update to the last discussion that we had on this topic on April 9th. We've got some preliminary feedback in response to some of the questions that council had specifically asked. And at this point, we are just looking to confirm what council's priorities are for direction before we take any next steps. As it is sort of stated at the conclusion of this report, our understanding at this stage is that if we do licensing, council's goal is that this be primarily focused on structural safety and nuisance concerns, to be minimally burdensome to the small operators, and to provide a framework where STAs, short-term accommodations, are permitted in areas rather than doing anything that's going to severely restrict the number that are operating in the community. But if we have misunderstood that direction, we would like to receive that clarification now.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Who wants to start? Does anybody want to start in the conversation? It appears I can start the conversation then. I think we're on the right track, Madam Clerk, as far as I'm concerned. I think we need to continue down the path that we've started with respect to trying to regulate. We're not going to try and eliminate or eradicate short-term accommodations, but I think it's important that we should try and regulate those types of businesses within our community. And I know there seems to be a will out there that there's hope that maybe upper level governments might take this challenge on for us, but I'm not seeing anything in the near future for that happening. So those are my thoughts. Welcome any other comments from anyone else on council. Seeing Councillor Hicks or Councillor Pennell? Councillor Hicks. We'll go to Councillor Hicks. I think she's ready.
Through you, your worship. So I do find it interesting that when you attended the webinar regarding Ramerick, Kawartha Lakes, and London, that the bylaws and licensing systems, once the licensing system is implemented, the demands on the enforcement will go up. And that brings us back to, are the licensing fees going to cover the cost of additional enforcement officers? And I think that's that is something that we are going to have to keep in mind, moving forward. Because if I'm not mistaken, we do have we did get additional seasonal bylaw enforcement officers for the summer season and sort of the shoulder months, if I'm not mistaken, like May, September, October. Am I right?
Yeah, we do have a contract for, I think it's 24 hours a week, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong on that number. But yes, we do have supplemental enforcement. And I think you're absolutely right. It's something that we do need to definitely address going forward, because I say, I don't think, even without these things, I don't think that we're going to get any less enforcement. I think we're going to have to take a serious look at maybe our next budget year to beef up our enforcement, just to, if for no other reason, to assist with what we have. So.
Without even doing any sort of implementation on licensing, just the number of calls and complaints. So I found that interesting that they recognize that. So, and I'm sure it was a point of discussion. So
I think any type of regulating is going to require or need enforcement improvement. So I think that's pretty much just a given. So. Councillor Pennell?
Thank you, Worship. Through you. So my main concerns with short-term accommodations is the people who live on either side of them that have been here for a long time, pay their taxes, and just want peaceful enjoyment of their properties. So my concerns have been twofold. One is for fire. How do these people that come down and stay in these new locations know how to get out and make sure that the house, the STA, is compliant to fire regulations? Because middle of the night, you're in a new house, how do you get out? So we need to make sure that there's evacuations, egress is fine that way. But the other part is, and you were just talking about it, about enforcement, is that quiet enjoyment. So what happens if at 11 o'clock at night that there's a big party going and the neighbors can't enjoy their peaceful property? Will the OPP enforce our bylaws? Because I don't think it's fair for the residents to have to wait a day or maybe even more until we have bylaw back on, and those people might be gone by that. So this is where I like the alternative options, number one, by adding an administration fee for bylaw officers to be able to have a cost recovery on repeat offenders. I think that's something that we should really look at.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Pennell. I could probably assist with the, I mean, obviously, we're not going to have bylaw people on 24/7, and the attendants of the police, they can deal with this in a number of different ways with respect to a noise complaint. I mean, obviously, we do have a close working relationship with respect to any type of enforcement that the OPP, and there's times when the OPP will attend residences that they may not have anything under any provincial statutes to deal with what they're dealing with, but there may be something under a bylaw, and they can forward that information on to us. But obviously, the OPP is the first line of defense on a Friday night at 2 o'clock in the morning, and always has and always will be. So we do have a good working relationship with respect to that. So I don't think that's as big a concern as one might think, but that's just my personal opinion on it. So, yep, go ahead.
Thank you. Just follow up on that, Your Worship. So at 2 o'clock on a Friday night or Saturday morning, whatever it is I guess 2 o'clock, would the OPP understand our bylaws there then? Would they have those bylaws with them?
They would understand them, but they wouldn't necessarily have to enforce them, but they will deal with the problem at hand, which was the noise complaint, right? So, and there's a number of ways of dealing with noise other than enforcing. Probably the piece of legislation that has the least teeth to it would be our bylaw. There are other methods that the OPP or any type of policing agency can deal with noise bylaw. They don't necessarily enforce it, but they can provide the information that to the municipality in order to enforce the bylaw, if in fact they feel that it's pertinent to enforce that bylaw. But they've got a lot of other tools in their toolbox in which they can deal with the noise complaint, being the Criminal Code of Canada or a lot of other different statutes. So I mean, it's always the first. It's the same as illegal parking at 3 o'clock in the morning if somebody's parked somewhere that they shouldn't be, right? We don't necessarily have people on to do that enforcement, but we do have the OPP who we pay to do that type of work. So there is a close relationship and they can forward. I know that we on a regular basis exchange information with the OPP and the and our bylaw personnel on a regular basis. So and not just with that type of thing, but with a lot of different things, a lot of the different issues that we have within the municipality. So
Thank you.
is there anything else, or would anybody else like to comment any further? Go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
Through you, your worship. Thank you. So Madam Clerk, under your alternative options, which I've read through several times now, 1 and 2, is it possible, rather than an alternative or an in addition to, well, yes, as an alternative, while we're still, can these be implemented now while we're still looking at actually licensing? And is it possible to have a phone number? Even if they do call the OPP, they could still call a complaint number to say it's a property at such and such, which gives bylaw the next day immediate information. Do you see where I'm going with this?
So through your worship, absolutely, if council so directs, we can work on items 1 and 2 while the bylaw is in development process. We would be significant lead time anyway on doing any implementation. Most municipalities that have successfully implemented these have at least a 6-month window between when the bylaw is finalized to when it comes into effect to give time for that education piece. The dedicated reporting hotline for violations is a service that is offered by the companies that do the data scraping to help you identify the Airbnb. So that's why that's a piece of the service. I think in the interim, we would probably just ask people to enter that in E11 because that information is also immediately actionable as soon as somebody's workday starts. So we'd encourage people to do that. And actually, that I've got the mic here, I am just going to draw attention back as we're talking about interim measures as noted earlier in the report. For the time being, however long that time being is, if anybody ever does have a safety concern about building code compliance, fire code compliance, any other compliance issue, we can absolutely still take action on those if they're reported to us. Nobody needs to wait for a Airbnb specific licensing bylaw to address those issues.
So staff is looking for direction tonight on how to proceed.
If you wish, I can assist, and you can tell me whether you like that. How does that sound?
That sounds fantastic.
I think that's
Thank
where
you,
you
Your
were
Worship.
headed, Councillor Hicks, I'm guessing. That one option is that council direct staff bring forward a draft licensing bylaw for council and the community input based on the following priorities: promoting health and safety of short-term rentals, minimizing barriers to licensing for small operators, and for creating a framework that supports short-term rentals as a residential use. Madam Clerk.
Through your worship, I do think Councillor Hicks also wanted to direct that we do alternative options 1 and 2 in the interim.
May I?
You have the floor, Councillor Hicks.
Through you, Your Worship, yes. And I think the sooner the education starts, the better. Regarding the fact that for every call, it's logged and repeat offenders will be charged accordingly. And I think we should advertise what the cost recovery will be so that there's no surprises. Because if you are an owner of an STA and you are causing grief to your neighbors, there's consequences. So I think the sooner that's out there, the better. And it would certainly alleviate some of the discussions of the non-STA properties, property owners. And that goes along with the public education efforts as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hicks. I think Councillor Shank, did you want Councillor Hicks to make the motion first, or did you want to comment first, Councillor? Go ahead, Councillor Shank.
So I understand that, but it goes both ways also to the resident that's beside the STA. I've had experience in the past where the short-term accommodation, the people were absolutely fantastic, quiet, but the neighbor didn't like it because there was somebody strange there, would complain, and numerous complaints on different individuals, and they weren't validated. There was no validity behind it. So there, when you're drafting something, that it goes both ways also. You know what I mean? So it's fair that if somebody is not living in his residence for a month and he rents it out or whatever, and he's a short-term accommodation, and the neighbor just spites him just to spite him because this is the day, this is the world that we live in today, that it goes both ways. You know, I just want to be fair on both sides.
Yeah, I think that's the whole concept, I think, Councillor Shanks. So, Madam Clerk, did you have what you needed, and does council wish to hear the full motion before we move any forward? Okay, Madam Clerk, do you have what you need?
Through your worship, I believe I do. I just also want to add that those, for council's awareness, those investing in public education efforts will require some resources, particularly the fire safety will be some work from our fire prevention team, and it's not going to be an overnight thing, but confirming that that is a priority of council for us to do that work. Yeah, just to confirm that information. And in response to Councillor Shank's comment, yes, certainly we would want to have some safeguards in any bylaw around any abuse of a reporting process. Similar to, you can't make false 911 reports and expect to have your neighbor charged for the fire truck showing up at their house. We would want to have similar protections for something like this.
Thanks, Madam Clerk. So let's, maybe we can review the motion so we realize that we're all on the same page here, and then we'll go from there, see where it lands.
So the proposed motion is that council receive for information the May 2024 short-term accommodations update report. Further, council direct staff bring forward a draft licensing bylaw for council and community input based on the priorities of promoting health and safety of short-term rentals, minimizing barriers to licensing for small operators, creating a framework that supports short-term rentals as a residential use, and further, that as an interim measure, council directs staff to implement an administration fee bylaw for bylaw enforcement and invest in public education efforts regarding town bylaws that affect short-term accommodations.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councillor Hicks, is that the direction you want to go in? Moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Norrie. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns with respect to the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Next up is Little Forest proposal update. And who will be speaking to that, Madam Clerk?
Through your worship, this is provided as an update to the deputation from a couple meetings ago. I will note that we did receive one additional letter response after this agenda was published from an area resident who was also in support of the proposal and thanked council for the opportunity to provide input. We do not have full details yet about what the scope or scale of that in-kind support is anticipated to look like. So if council does want to formally approve this project tonight, we would recommend that any in-kind support be conditional on first getting that detailed plan of what all of the intended scope of that support is.
I think that would be a proper direction to go in. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Does anybody wish to speak to it or comment on it? We do have a recommendation the council receive for information on the Little Forest proposal update, and further that council provide direction with respect to the proposal. And that's what we're looking for, is direction with respect to going forward with respect to the Little Forest proposal update. Would anybody want to make that motion that we move? I think we're looking forward to move forward with it, but under the conditions that that Madam Clerk has stated. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Norrie. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns? Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Sorry. So just to confirm, the motion being voted on is that council approve the project to proceed with the installation to be done under the direction of town staff, and further that approval of any in-kind support for the project will be subject to receipt of a detailed support request, which contains the description and quantity of all materials and staff hours being requested.
I believe that's the direction we wanted to go in. So thank you, Madam Clerk. We do have a mover and a seconder. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns with respect to the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Councillor Pennell?
Abstained.
And Councillor Pennell has abstained. Motion is carried. Next up, purchase of the articulating boom lift. And I believe Chris is coming up. Go ahead, Mr. Brown. Whenever you get settled, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. This report is to purchase a new to us articulating boom lift. It is a used machine. We went out for tender for this, and we only had one submission, and that was from United Rentals. It's a JLG lift, 40-foot electric model, and it has 1,100 hours on it. I'll note that the cost $60,000, $679, and that is about half the cost, at least, of a brand new lift. So what we're looking for more so than the year in this model was the fact that it didn't have a ton of hours on it. Our current lift that we use, that this one is replacing, is 5 times that in terms of hours. So we're hoping to get lots of years out of this, 10 to 15 years out of this model, and we're looking for approval to purchase that basically tomorrow after this meeting.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Brown. Go ahead, go Councillor Norrie, and then I think that Councillor Martin, you have your hand up as well? No, Councillor Norrie, then Councillor Pennell.
Your Worship, Chris, have we had an expert look at it, like a mechanic or whoever looks after these things?
Yeah, through Your Worship. So this will go. It's already in Kingston at their yard there. So they will be fully inspected. It comes with a 10-year inspection. We have to get it inspected every 10 years for all the mechanical components, and then we do a yearly safety on it as well. So that it'll become all ready to go. We also included in this cost. We also added rough terrain tires for a little bit more height for loading and unloading off trailers, and also getting over curbs for things like downtown, in and out of the arena and things like that as well. So that includes those new tires as well.
Thanks, Councillor Norrie. Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship, through you. Chris, thanks for the report. 1,102 hours over, and the machine's 12 years old. 100 hour, less than 100 hours a year is nothing for it when you think about it. My question to you is, back during budget negotiations, we were talking about starting a list or a file of everything that is done to the machine. Have we started that yet? And so we know how much monies we're putting in for maintenance and repairs and what things are costing, and not along with this one, but all the other new equipment that we're purchasing as well.
Yeah, through Your Worship, to Councillor Pennell. So we have started that with all of our fleet, heavy and light fleet. We are planning on doing the same thing with all of our equipment as well. I can't say that we have to this day, but we will be doing that as well. So we've created a separate GL line in the budget for each fleet vehicle. So we know exactly year by year how much money we're spending on maintenance on those vehicles. We'd like to do the same thing for that, for all of our assets, which would include all of our construction equipment, parks and facilities equipment, all equipment really.
Thank you. I think this would be a really good one to start on with it, as we know that we're buying something used, and for somebody that I used to sell these things in my past career, so I know the inspections and stuff like that need to be done on that. So I'm quite sure that it's going to be sold to us in good working order. I hope it is, and but it just be nice to keep track of this one. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Councillor Pennell. Is there any other questions for Chris? Go ahead, Councillor Shank.
So when you have a 12-year-old vehicle, 12 years, and what the technology is in a battery from 12 years to this year is immense. So I know the batteries are extremely expensive for those operations, like a battery forklift or anything else like this. So is there any warranty on the battery? Because you know what I mean, I hate to buy something for 60,000 when you have to put a $20,000 battery in it because it was no good after a while. So I just like to have our bases covered that way, just for the battery portion.
Yeah, through your worship, we will be doing a full inspection ourselves as well when it gets delivered. I believe there's 4 batteries in this unit, and they're all brand new. I'm told, so I will confirm that definitely before we take it on.
Great, thanks, Councillor Shank. Is there anything further? Councillor Hicks?
I'll move staff recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor Hicks. We have a staff recommendation that council receive for information, community and corporate services, purchase of articulating boom lift report, and further that council accepts the RFT CC 2024-02 process undertaken by municipal staff, and further that council award 1 used articulating boom lift to United Rentals of Canada, Inc. United Rentals. Moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Shank. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Next up is the South Fredericksburg AC replacement. I believe, Chris, that's yours as well.
Yeah, not too much to add to this report. Just that we did have 5 submissions for the tender. They were Cairo Mechanical Limited, True Comfort Heating and Cooling Limited, ES Fox Limited, AFW Construction Limited, K Knudsen Construction Limited. You can see in the report there the cost of each submission. I also noted the make of the equipment that they are proposing to install, as well as delivery time. So what I wanted, we do recommend that we go with the lowest price submitted, Cairo Mechanical Limited. The alternative option to consider would be to go with the second lowest price for the shorter delivery time. So that's something council could consider. Obviously, we're getting into the summer months, and the air conditioning that services the main hall at South Fred is not working, and it won't be working until we can get this replacement done. So that is something to consider, but other than that, pretty straightforward.
Thanks, Councillor. I'll go to Deputy Mayor Carver, and I'll call Councillor Shank. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Carver.
So Chris, just to be clear, there's 3 companies that quoted on the York, and they're all identical.
Yes, through your worship, yes, they are.
Okay, I would support going with the second lowest bidder, being True Comfort. The fact that 4 weeks out is a lot better than 8 to 12 weeks out, seeing as we're coming into summer months and we don't have any air conditioning down there now. If we're looking to do rentals, I think we should be looking at going. I know it's extra cost. It is more money, but 4 weeks is much better than 8 to 12.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Carver. Councillor Shank.
I concur with Deputy Mayor Calver that we go with the second option. For the sole reason is that it'll be installed by the end of June instead of the end of August, beginning of September. So if you're going to go all summer without any air conditioning in a commercial building, you know, it's not going to, that would not fly. So I would go with the second option, and keeping it local too, I think it helps also. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shank. Is there Councillor Pennell? And then I'll go to Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Worship. Chris, when you mentioned that the recommendation would be to go with the less expensive one, is that just because of the dollar value? My question is, if we choose to go with the True Comfort, do we have a good working relationship with that company? Have they done work with us before? How confident are you in that delivery and that price if we went up?
Through your worship. So the main reason for the staff recommendation is $8,000 to me is enough to justify going with the lowest price. We know that they had good references, and they're a reputable company. True Comfort in the second spot there, we do have a very good working relationship with them. They do a lot of our spring and fall maintenance on a lot of our buildings now, and we have worked with them a lot in the past. And those were the only 2 that were actually would come under budget. So that was the main reason for my staff recommendation, was just the difference in price for sure. But the alternative operation for sure is getting that AC in as quick as possible, but also knowing True Comfort and what they bring to the table, and the fact that we've worked with them in the past.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Councillor Pennell. Councillor Martin, then I'll go to Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, Councillor Pennell covered part of my question about the True Comfort and what we get them to do now. But I also think it's important that we get the air conditioning in sooner rather than later. It's going to affect revenue as well on the other end, is it not, Chris? If we don't get the air conditioning in, people are not going to rent the hall as quickly as they might.
Yes, for sure. Through your worship to Councillor Martin, we're actually telling people right now as they're booking. Just want to let you know that right now we don't have any AC. So right away when they hear that, if their events for August, they're a little bit worried, right? So as soon as we make a decision tonight, we'll be able to inform the public exactly what's happening. I can make the calls tomorrow morning and find out, depending on what we do go with, get that order in right away so that we can cut that lead time down even more.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Your Worship. So Councillor Pennell and Councillor Martin both asked part of my question, but I was going to ask you, how many bookings do we currently have for South Fred? Do you know? And I see Annie jumping on her computer back there. So sort of an open question to you both, because I'm thinking that this hall is going to become more critical as we move forward in order to provide the community with some space for their events. So I too am in favor of going with True Comfort, but that would be my motion.
Yep, thanks, Councillor Hicks. Councillor Martin, then I'll go to Deputy Mayor Calver.
I just wanted to ask one more thing. The delivery of June, is that pretty much guaranteed? Like, there's not a chance that True Comfort will come back and say, oh, we can't get the equipment now until August or something like that?
There's always that chance. So when they submit, that's one of the important things that they have to say is, delivery time. How quickly can you get the make, the model that you're proposing? And if they were to say, oh, sorry, I just called York and we're not going to be able to get this for 8 weeks, that could certainly change things. That would be them not holding up their end of the submission, and so that they're bound to the conditions of the tender. So that would probably have to come back at that point because they didn't meet what they said they would.
Thanks again, Chris.
Thanks, Councillor Martin. You're getting close to my questions, so go ahead, Deputy Mayor Calver.
I was just wondering if we want to make a motion or.
Yeah, sorry, I guess Annie's got an answer for Councillor Hicks's couple questions back about the rentals there. Go ahead, Annie.
Through your worship to Councillor Hicks, currently there are no bookings in the hall between June and August.
Go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
So can I ask staff then, if the motion is passed, we go with the 4-week installation, everything goes according to Hoyle, fingers crossed, can we put out a public statement that, hey, there's AC at South Fred, so don't go anywhere else, stay here in Greater Napanee? Can that be put out so that the public knows?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Deputy Mayor Calver.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to reiterate about with bookings and stuff, I drive by there quite a bit and there's always vehicles there. That's really concerning. But with the possible sale of the Lions Hall, people are going to be looking for halls. And so I think it's appropriate we try to get this done as quickly and swiftly as possible.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Calver. I think I see the direction we're going in. The only question I have, Chris, before I entertain a motion, and I agree with what we've heard here so far, I think it's some time is of the utmost importance right now with respect to air conditioning in the summer. And I think you might have answered it with Councillor Martin's question that if for some reason within this 4 weeks this doesn't happen, do we have the opportunity either to come back or do we have the opportunity to go to True Comfort and say, listen, you guaranteed it in 4 weeks. If it's going to be 8 weeks, can you do better on the price? because we do know that if it's going to take 8 weeks, we can get it cheaper. But I guess, and I'm thinking a little bit outside the box here, can we do that with respect to something like this? That if it's a guaranteed 4 weeks, it's a guaranteed 4 weeks. I agree. I think we need this thing up and running sooner than later, so.
Yeah, so your worship, so that'll be basically my first question. As soon as I talk to them and issue them a purchase order number, we'll be explaining the conversations that were had here tonight and making sure that they understand that one of the major reasons why they were awarded the tender is because of their short delivery time. And then I'll get an update and I can provide an update to council based on what the conversation is.
Perfect. That answers my question. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Shank.
So, may I ask, is there when these POs are issued and the guarantee is supposed to be 4 weeks and they ended up being 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever, is there a withheld, when do you make that payment? When the job is completed? Now, do you have anything in the contract that you sign or do in the PO that there's a certain amount being withheld for every week that's not going to be done? Because if they're promising 4 weeks, the only reason why I'm saying this is because the pickleball field, you know what I mean? And that fiasco, thank God it's getting painted now. But all I'm saying is it took a year and a half. So all I'm saying is if they're saying it's within 4 weeks, then we're going to hold you to your word. If not, it's going to be a certain percentage that's going to be held back. It's going to cost you for not getting it done. That's just part of doing business. So can that be done, or have you done that in the past, or just to, make sure that it gets done what it's supposed to be done?
Yeah, I haven't personally done that in the past. I don't think it says anywhere on the actual purchase order in terms of the terms and conditions, but I can circle back and just check with finance staff and just sort of see what rights we have in terms of the timelines.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I'd just like to have staff, when you have your senior leadership, that anytime you're doing business with an agency or with any, they're saying that they can provide a product at a certain time. And then they go ahead and they're, dealing with government, we can go ahead and, play with it and do with this or that. There's got to be something in business that you promised 4 weeks, you're going to do the business, this is the quote, this is what we're going to pay you. Anything beyond that, I'm sorry, guys, it's going to cost you. It's just like part of doing business. So it's not just this, but it's a common practice when you're doing things there with other outside agencies, that if you're saying you're going to do something, we expect you. I can understand small little things, but if it's a year and a half later and they're still haven't painted it takes that long, come on, guys. We got to do something different here. So as long as we look at something and see what you can do or what you can't do municipally wise, I think it would be advantageous to look down that road.
Yeah, and I think, I think Chris has got some good direction here tonight, so I'm sure that he'll bring it back to us if there's any kind of indication that we're not going to get this thing going. So go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
Through you, your worship. So Ellen, I've never seen a purchase order from the town of Napanee, but I'm pretty sure that there's boilerplate terms and conditions somewhere in there. You may have to check with our legal counsel, but you should be able to put something in the way of special terms and conditions. And when they sign back the acknowledgement on the order, they're committing to the 4 weeks. And if they don't make the 4 weeks, they're docked 5% for every week they're late on. So something, that's what I think Councillor Shank is getting to. So there may already be something in there. It's just never been enforced. So yeah, you'd have to dig through the fine print.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Councillor Hicks. Well, go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, worship, through you. Council, I'm wondering if we could do something like this, like what we're talking about, holding back monies or doing all this other stuff. We don't do that when we buy vehicles and they don't make the date, right? And we're talking a lot more money and such. What I'm wondering is, could we give Chris the authority that when he cuts the purchase order tomorrow, he talks to True Comfort, confirms the delivery date. If it's not within the 4 weeks, that Chris can have the authority to go to the other company and carry on with that and see what their dates are going to be. Because for Chris, for you to come back to us, is another 2 weeks you're going to add on to that. So, and I don't want to hold that up just over. So I'm just wondering if we can work it into the motion somehow, that let's go with True Comfort. If they can't make the 4 weeks, call the other company, see what they can do. And the lesser of the 2 weeks, or lesser of the 2 delivery times is who I'd go with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think what we need to do is we'll leave it in the hands of staff. I'm sure that Chris will come back to us in the not too distant future if he looks like there's problems. And we may be overthinking this. I mean, we really are because, you know, they've told us 4 weeks. I'm sure that they're going to have it in there in 4 weeks. I just don't want to overthink it too much when we probably already have. So, but I know that Mr. Brown can bring this back to us if he thinks there's going to be a problem. He'll bring it back to me and we can rectify it if we have to. So, Deputy Mayor Cower.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I mean, it says 4 weeks. The other guys are 8 to 12 weeks. That's quite a span. That's like a month. I wouldn't get all too excited if they were 4.5 weeks, but yeah, we should make sure that that's what it is and try to keep the business local.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Calver. If there's nothing else, we do have a recommendation that council receive for information, Community and Corporate Services, South Fredericksburg AC Replacement Report, and further that council accepts RFQ CC 2024-01 process undertaking by municipal staff, and further that council award RFQ CC 2024-01 to True Comfort Heating and Cooling Limited. I think that's what I heard from members of council. Would somebody like to make that motion? Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Martin. Is there any further comments, questions? Go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
Are we not making the motion, Your Worship, to award to True Comfort?
I think that's what I said.
Oh, sorry. I thought I heard you say Cairo. My apologies. Okay, sorry.
Now you've got me double thinking, but I'm pretty sure that's what I said. So in any event, we do have a motion that's on the floor. If there's to True Comfort, if there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Next up is the South Fredericksburg Playground Replacement, and I believe Mr. Brown, you're up for that as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, so as we know, we had to remove the South Fred playground structure last summer. It had failed comprehensive third-party safety inspection. It wasn't deemed safe for play. So I did list in the report a few major reasons why. What we did was we reached out to playground planners as part of our cooperative purchasing, and we got 3 options for possible replacements. Those options were then given to the Recreation Committee for their review and discussion. They have looked at the designs and come up with option 2, but they would like to see the 6-foot slide as opposed to the 5-foot slide that was in some of the other options. So a bit of a combination of options. So in the report, I have an option 2, and then I have an option 2 revised. There's also images of what those look like. So I would recommend from staff that we do go with that 6-foot wave slide in the option 2. So that would be the option 2 revised. I just want to make council aware that we budgeted $21,150 for this replacement project. So that would put us slightly over budget for the project when you go to that 6-foot wave slide. So the difference is, roughly $800, $900, which I think we can probably absorb. The alternative option would be to go with option 2, with just the 5-foot slide to stay under budget. I would also note that these price options include HST, delivery, and installation, but they don't include the site prep or the protective surfacing that comes with playgrounds. So staff are looking to do this internally. Public Works will help us with some of the site prep excavation, and the Parks and Facilities staff will purchase the microfiber wood chips to add in for the protective surfacing. We are starting to move a lot of our newer playgrounds or retrofit playgrounds to the wood chips as opposed to sand. It's just better for compaction and also helps keep the weeds out. So happy to take more questions.
Thanks, Chris. Is there any comments or questions? Go ahead, Councillor Shank.
No, I'll make a motion that we go with option 2 revised and have the 6-foot slide.
We do we do have a motion, which has been seconded by Councillor Hicks, that council receive for information, Community Corporate Services, South Fredericksburg Playground Replacement Report, and further that council direct staff to purchase playground option two revised for the cost of $22,013.66. We do have a motion on the floor. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns with respect to the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Next up is the SPC Arena dehumidifier replacement, and I believe, Chris, that's yours as well.
So this is just some forward thinking here by staff. The plan all along was to replace the condenser at the SPC this summer and then replace the dehumidifier next summer. These are critical components to the ice making process, and they're both about a 20-year life expectancy. So we've reached that mark. The dehumidifier, we did have some issues with it just recently. It's not in great shape. We've replaced several components short of the actual desiccant wheel, which is the major component. The desiccant wheel itself is $50,000 to $65,000 to replace, and it's approximately 20 to 25 weeks lead time for that to be built because they're built like for like. So with that being said, because the new dehumidifier, we would need to order it right now in order to be able to receive it and install it next summer. I'm asking council to approve the replacement of the dehumidifier ahead of the 2025 budget. I know there are some options. We have an SPC reserve if council was to, get worried about approving money and approving orders ahead of time. Completely understand. But we do have an SPC reserve there for some capital projects. Not that we want to deplete that either. But we do need to order this now if we plan on putting it in next summer. And if we do wait until January when budget is passed, there is a risk of failure here that it wouldn't last until the summer of 2026, which would mean for the community groups that use the facility for things like hockey and skating, we could be down. The dehumidifier is a critical piece to making sure the ice is good quality and safe. Any questions? I'm happy to take.
Thanks, Chris. Is there any questions with respect to Chris's presentation? I know that it's not going to affect this year's budget, but we're sort of pre-authorizing it for next year. And it is a critical piece of equipment at the arena. And it doesn't make any sense, to, at least in my world, to be putting $50,000 or $60,000 into a piece of equipment that we know isn't going to last either. So is there any questions or comments with respect to Chris's presentation or the report? Seeing, yep, go ahead, Deputy Mayor Cower.
Sorry, through your worship. So you just said something about 65,000, but the price I'm looking at over here is 159. Which is it we're approving here?
No, I was mentioning that 50 to 65,000 was for the replacement of the wheel if we didn't order it. So if, say, the wheel goes in January, we'd have to put a wheel in it to get the arena back up and running, and then we'd still have to get a new condenser or dehumidifier anyways, I'm thinking anyways, or condenser, so. Go ahead.
So we're going to replace the wheel, or are we going to go to 159 and replace the unit?
What I think Chris was looking for was authorization to order the unit, which won't come in until next year. And, but that won't come out of this year's budget. We'll have to budget for it in 2025. But if we don't order, it's like ordering the dump trucks, I think, that we did during budget time. Is we don't order them now, we're not going to get them till a year and a half from now. So.
No, I just being clear on that. I heard you say something about 65. No, that's awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Calver. If there's nothing else, we do have a recommendation that council receive for information the Community and Corporate Services SPC Arena Dehumidifier Replacement Report, and further that council approve the replacement of the dehumidifier ahead of the 2025 budget discussions to allow for extensive lead time. Councillor Hicks, moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Shank. Is there any further questions or comments with respect to the motion that's on the floor? Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Shank.
I got to hold the button and talk closely to the mic, or else there's a lady that will get very angry with me. I hate spending money for next year, but the point is, Chris, I totally understand it because if you've ever been in a hockey arena that does not have a good dehumidifier, you know what I mean? The glass is covered, the ice isn't the greatest. Number one is safety, and this is being proactive. So therefore, we can't have our arena not in good shape. So this is it's something that's definitely needed. So there we go. That's the reason why I think we all should be supporting this.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Shank. Is there any other comments, questions, or concerns? If not, we do have a motion on the floor and we will call for the vote. All in favor of the motion that's on the floor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Transit Agreement Deserano Transit Pilot Project. And I see Annie coming up, so I believe Annie will be speaking to that. When you get settled in, the floor will be yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will just add that this agreement has been presented to the Town of Deserano's Council on May 22nd, and their council has approved that their mayor and clerk sign the agreement as shown in this report. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Annie. Is there any questions or comments or concerns with respect to the presentation or the report that's before us with respect to the transit agreement, Deserano Transit Pilot? Go ahead, Councillor Nori.
Just to make everybody aware, the SOS has had to cancel their little bus service. It was costing them $1,600 a month, 6 riders, non-members. So as of June, the end of June, it's gone. So we need this service to get people around.
Thanks, Councillor Nori, and that's a good point. I think there may be something as we move forward with respect to assisting our folks at the SOS with respect to that. So, Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Your Worship. So yesterday, I was at the board meeting for the PECUNIARY Regional Marketing Board, and I asked Doug if he was aware, Doug Stevenson, the executive director, if he was aware of the transit, Deserano Transit, and he looked like, no, that wasn't something that was on his radar, but it is now, because as I mentioned to him, based on the data that we've seen, most of the riders are using the bus for work. But I said to Doug, you've got some ladies in Belleville that want to do a day trip and have lunch and a drink at the waterfront or shop wherever in Napanee. They can tour the whole town and get back to Belleville within a 12-hour span. And he may reach out to you about promoting something like that with the bus service, which I think is only a good thing if it's going to increase the ridership. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Hicks. I think you bring up a good point. So is there anything further anyone would like to ask or discuss with respect to this report? If not, we do have a recommendation that council receive for information the Transit Agreement Deserano Transit Pilot Project report, and further that council endorse an agreement for the Deserano Transit Pilot Project from January 9th, 2024 until March 31st, 2025, and further that the mayor and the clerk be authorized to execute the agreement with the town of Deserano. Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Hicks. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Bylaws. I don't believe we have any bylaws, Madam Clerk, this evening. Information reports from members. Is there any information reports from any members of council they'd like to share with us this evening? Seeing none, inquiries. Do any members of council wish to make any inquiries to staff that they can come back with a report at a later date to enlighten us on anything? Seeing none, notices of motion. Do any members of council have any notices of motion they would like to make? Seeing none, new business. Is there any new business this evening, Madam Clerk? I don't believe there is. Or any new business from any members of council? Seeing none, announcements. Do any members of council like to make any announcements? And I suspect there may be a few. So Councillor Shank, and then I'll go to Councillor Hicks.
I think it's an excellent and good news story that I believe is out in the paper about I know the OPP, a lot of times they get a bad rap. We're not doing this or not doing that, but for the amount of seizure that they did with the long guns and the illegal pistols and the amount of narcotics that were seized, I think the municipality, if we could go ahead and draft up a letter and have the mayor sign it and send it to their superiors of saying, hey, great job, guys, because a lot of times people will go ahead and say, hey, great job and everything else, and it falls on deaf ears. Nobody else knows about it. But when they've done a great job and what they've done, and with this, some of the, definitely the heartaches and some of the stuff that they have to go through, that we should send a letter of saying appreciation of thank you very much for keeping our area safe and what they did in this thing. Now, you being in that protocol, I don't know if this is the correct thing to do or not, but I just like to give a big shout out to what they did and the success that they had.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Shank. I'll leave that, the intricacies of that up to Madam Clerk, but I do agree with you is that, I mean, obviously it's concerning to see that many weapons, that much drugs, and I mean, you know, money, it all goes hand to hand, but it's concerning to see that it's in our communities. I think we all accept and know that it probably is in our communities, but now it's off the streets, and that's a very welcome thing to know that. So thanks for bringing that. Yep, go ahead, Councillor Shank.
Only reason why I'm saying that is because I wasn't aware, being a rural farmer, you're not into these intricacies of what gets sold and what isn't getting sold. But I was told by another individual that an illegal pistol that might be purchased for $1,000 or whatever gets transported to Toronto and gets sold to the gangs for $10,000 or $12,000. So it's quite a lucrative business. So for a seizure of that amount, you know what I mean, and the work that they did to it. So that's the reason why I'm saying if the clerk could draft up a letter and have the mayor sign it and send it off, I think that'd be great.
Yep, great. Appreciate that. Thanks, Councillor Shank. Councillor Hicks.
It was a good meeting last week outside in front of Town Hall. So I'd just like to draw everyone's attention to all the work that's been going on. It's going to be a 3-month, hopefully not longer process, and it looks absolutely fantastic. Just the primer has made a big difference on the west end. So to any of the public, there's the control sample on the north side of the building, which is larger, and it looks fantastic. The brick painters, I think, were a great choice, and they're really going to come through for us all the way around. So thank you.
Great. Yeah, and thanks, Councillor Hicks. It really is quite exciting. And to drive by and see the work and to see the progress that's happening, it really is neat to see. So thanks for bringing that up. Is there any other announcements that anyone would like to make this evening? Seeing none, the forward calendar. I know we've all had an opportunity to take a look at the forward calendar. Is there anything in the forward calendar that anyone would like to address or speak to, either that or the council resolution tracker? Councillor Hicks.
Just to reiterate, Your Worship, the official plan open house is June 20th, and I believe Councillor Pinnell already referenced that, but it doesn't hurt to say it again. So if you want to have your voice heard, you best show up. Thanks.
Yeah, and it really is an important document for our municipality going forward. So thanks. We can't say it enough. You're absolutely right. So is there anything else? Seeing none, we'll look for a motion to confirm the proceedings of the Town of Greater Napanee. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Martin. Read a first, second, and finally passed this 28th day of May, 2024. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. And we'll look for a motion for adjournment. Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Pinnell. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thanks, folks. We've covered an awful lot of ground this evening, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.